We're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 10, the departure of Lord Krishna for Dwarka, and it's texts 11 and 12.
There's 110.
It's 110, text 11 and 12. I have a copy of it. Okay. No, I guess I've missed class from being in the kitchen. So I know there's sometimes different protocols, and I'm wondering, is it okay if I just, do we want to chant the word for word as well, or is there...
We usually
Yeah.
chant the word for word.
Okay. And then everybody will repeat it and everybody respond.
However you want to do it, but usually the bases we cover are the Sanskrit,
Right.
and then the synonyms.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Just want to make sure that sometimes there's slight variations. Okay, so text 11 and 12.
You might want to increase the volume.
Good. Satsangan mukta dusango,
Satsangan mukta
dusango, atum notsahate buddha, kirchamanam yaso yasya, sakrita karnya rochanam. And then text number 12. Tasmin yasta diyaparta. Saheran viraham katam. Darshana sparsha samlapa. Shayanasana bhojanai. Satsangan mukta dusango. Atum notsa hate buddha. Kirchamanam yaso yasya. Sakrita karnya rochanam. Tasmin yasta diyaparta. Sahiran viraham katam. Darshana sparsha samlapa. Shayanasana bhojanai. Satsangan mukta dusango. Atum notsahate buddha. Kirchamanam yaso yasya. Sakrita karnya rochanam. Tasmin yasta diyaparta. Sahiran viraham katam. Darshana sparsha samlapa. Shayanasana bhojanai.
Satsangan mukta dusango.
Satsangan mukta dusango.
Atum notsahate buddha. Kirchamanam yasho yasya. Sakridha karnya rochanam. Tasmin yasta dhiyapata. Sahiran viraham katam. Darshana sparsha samlapa. Shayanasana bhojanai.
Satsanga, by the association of pure devotees,
By the association of pure devotees,
mukta Muktadu Sangaha,
Muktadu Sangaha,
freed from bad materialistic association.
freed from bad materialistic association.
Hatum,
Atum,
to give up.
give up.
Na utsahate,
Na utsahate,
never attempts.
never attempts.
Buddha,
Buddha,
one who has understood the Lord.
one who has understood the Lord.
Kirchamanam,
Kirchamanam,
glorifying.
glorifying.
Yashaha,
Yashaha,
fame.
fame.
Yasya,
Yasya,
whose.
whose.
Sakrit,
Sakrit,
once only.
once only.
Akarnya,
Karnya,
hearing only.
hearing only.
Rochanam,
Rochanam,
pleasing.
pleasing,
Tasmin,
Tasmin,
unto him.
unto him.
Nyastadiyaha,
Nastadyaha,
one who has given his mind unto him.
one who has given his mind unto him.
Partaha,
Rataha,
the sons of Pritha.
the sons of Pita.
Saheran,
Saheran,
can tolerate.
can tolerate.
Viraham,
Viraham,
separation.
separation.
Katam,
Katam,
how.
how.
Darshana,
Darshana,
seeing face to face.
seeing face to face.
Sparsha,
Sparsha,
touching.
Touching,
Samlapa,
samlapa,
conversing.
conversing.
Shayana,
Sayana,
sleeping.
sleeping.
Asana,
Ashana,
sitting.
sitting.
Bojana, ahai. Bojana ahai,
Bhojanaya,
dining together.
dining together.
So, translation. The intelligent who have understood the Supreme Lord in association with pure devotees and have become freed from bad materialistic association can never avoid hearing the glories of the Lord, even though they have heard them only once. How then could the Pandavas tolerate his separation, where they had been intimately associated with his person, seeing him face to face, touching him, conversing with him, and sleeping, sitting, and dining with him? Purport. The living being's constitutional position is one of serving a superior. He is obliged to serve by force the dictates of illusory material energy in different phases of sense gratification. And in serving the senses, he is never tired. Even though he may be tired, the illusory energy perpetually forces him to do so without being satisfied. There is no end to such sense gratificatory business, and the conditioned soul becomes entangled in such servitude without hope of release. The release is only effected by association with pure devotees. By such association, one is gradually promoted to his transcendental consciousness. Thus he can know that his eternal position is to render service unto the Lord, and not to the perverted senses in the capacity of lust, anger, desire to lord it over, etc. Material society, friendship, and love are all different phases of lust. Home, country, family, society, wealth, and all sorts of corollaries are all causes of bondage in the material world, where the threefold miseries of life are concomitant factors. By associating with pure devotees and by hearing them submissively, attachment for material enjoyment becomes slackened, and attachment for hearing about the transcendental activities of the Lord become prominent. Once they are, they will go on progressively without stoppage, like fire in gunpowder. It is said that Hari, the personality of Godhead, is so transcendently attractive that even those who are self-satisfied by self-realization and are factually liberated from all material bondage also become devotees of the Lord. Under the circumstances, it is easily understood what must have been the position of the Pandavas, who were constant companions of the Lord. They could not even think of separation from Sri Krishna, since the attraction was more intense for them because of continuous personal contact. His remembrance by his form, qualities, name, fame, pastimes, etc., is also attractive for the pure devotees. So much so that he forgets all forms, quality, name, fame, and activities of the mundane world. And due to his mature association with pure devotees, he is not out of contact with the Lord for a moment. So the translation again. The intelligent who have understood the Supreme Lord in association with pure devotees and have become freed from bad materialistic association can never avoid hearing the glories of the Lord, even though they have heard them only once. How then could the Pandavas tolerate his separation? For they had been intimately associated with his person, seeing him face to face, touching him, conversing with him, and sleeping, sitting, and dining with him. So, I was reading this verse over the past couple of days and reading the purport, And if you notice, I have a bag of books with me because as I was reading, a lot of points that Srila Prabhupada brought up in the purport were reminding me of different points that Srila Prabhupada had made in other purports. I read this and I looked at another verse in the Bhagavatam and another thing, and I ended up back at the Chaitanya Charitamrita, which ended up being surprising because what I didn't realize, well, it was surprising for two reasons. One, Prabhupada makes a point in the purport that the personality of Godhead is so transcendently attractive that even those who are self-satisfied by self-realization are factually liberated from all material bondage, which is the Atmaram verse from the Bhagavatam. And what I found was that in actually the chapter, the Madhya Lila verse, chapter 24, where Lord Chaitanya is explaining, giving the 61 explanations of the Atmaram verse to Sanatana Goswami, he actually quotes this verse, and Prabhupada gives a purport on it. So I actually wanted to read that purport as well because I think Prabhupada really drew out some of the points that he made in the Bhagavatam purport. But I thought it was just interesting that Prabhupada mentions that verse, and then also this was one of the verses that, again, that Lord Chaitanya in this, he's speaking with Sanatana Goswami, and after he's instructed him, I think it's basically 5 chapters in the Madhya Lila, verses 20 to 24, and it's about 1,200 verses, so it's quite an extensive set of instructions and guidance that he's giving Sanatana Goswami. And so at the end, at the end of that, Sanatana Goswami tells Lord Chaitanya that he remembers that he heard that that Lord Chaitanya had explained this Atmaram verse to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, so he's asking him to please repeat that, if he could explain it to him as well. And then so Lord Chaitanya did. And in this section of his explanation, he's actually he's speaking about devotees, and he's glorifying devotees in devotional service. So it was striking, one, that Prabhupada mentioned the Atmaram verse in the purport, and then in that explanation, again, this was one of the verses that Lord Chaitanya used when he made a point about devotees, and what he said was, with the previous verse, he said, one is elevated to the platform of devotional service by the mercy of a Vaishnava, the bona fide spiritual master, and by the special mercy of Krishna. On that platform, one gives up all material desires and the association of unwanted people. Thus, one is elevated to the platform of pure devotional service. And then to sort of give a proof text for that point, Lord Chaitanya then quotes text 11, the intelligent who have understood the Supreme Lord in the association of pure devotees and have become freed from bad materialistic association can never avoid hearing the glories of the Lord, even though they have heard them only once. So, before I read the purport, one thing that's also very interesting with the Chaitanya Charitamrita is that both Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami in his writing and Lord Chaitanya in his explanation, they're always quoting a lot of verses to prove their point. And so it's very interesting that it's very interesting to see how Prabhupada would translate different verses. And oftentimes they're slightly different than what he does in the Bhagavatam. So it's really interesting to me to read the Chaitanya Charitamrita, see how Prabhupada translate the verse, and then look at the verse in the Bhagavatam, because it really helps point out, you see Srila Prabhupada highlighting different aspects of the verse and give you a different nuance. And I always found it very helpful for me in reading to see how Prabhupada will use a different verse, to see how in his purports he'll take a verse and make a point and use a Bhagavad Gita verse, use a Srimad Bhagavatam verse. And so you have all these different, within purports and within the actual books, you have all these different translations that really give you a full picture the meaning of different verses. So this one in particular, he actually used the same translation he did in the Bhagavatam. So here's what Srila Prabhupada said in this purport. He said, this is a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam 1.10.11. All the members of the Kuru dynasty offered respects when Krishna was leaving Hastinapur after the battle of Kurukshetra. Krishna was going to his own kingdom, and all the members of the Kuru dynasty were overwhelmed by his departure. This verse was spoken in that connection by Shukadeva Goswami. A pure devotee becomes attached to Krishna by hearing the Lord's glories. The Lord's glories and the Lord himself are identical. One has to be qualified to understand this absolute truth. Therefore, one should be given a chance to associate with a pure devotee. Our Krishna consciousness movement is meant for this purpose. We want to create pure devotees so that other people will benefit by their association. In this way, the number of pure devotees increases. Professional preachers cannot create pure devotees. There are many professional preachers of Srimad Bhagavatam who read this work to earn their livelihood. However, they cannot convert materialistic people to devotional service. Only a pure devotee can convert others to pure devotional service. It is therefore important for all the preachers in our Krishna consciousness movement to first become pure devotees and follow the regular principles, refraining from illicit sex, meat eating, gambling, and intoxication. They should regularly chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra on their beads, follow the devotional process, rise early in the morning, attend Mangalarti, and recite Srimad Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita regularly. In this way, one can become purified and free from all material contamination. Sarvapati vinirmuktam tatprat nirmalam rishikena hrishikesha sevanam bhakti uchate. Bhakti, or devotional service, means engaging all one's senses in the service of the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the master of all the senses. When the spirit soul renders service unto the Supreme, there are two side effects. One is freed from all material designations, and one's senses are purified simply by being employed in the service of the Lord. To make a show of devotional service will not help one. One must be a pure devotee following the devotional process. Then one can convert others to devotional service. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu practiced devotional service and preached Apani Acharya Bhakti Karila Prachara. If a preacher behaves properly in devotional service, he will be able to convert others. Otherwise, his preaching will have no effect. So I think the reason it struck me is because Srila Prabhupada was pointing that out in the purport in the Bhagavatam, that our constitutional position is that we're servants, and either we are going to be in material consciousness serving the material energy, or if we want release from that, we have to become servants of Krishna. We have to become devotees. And he was explaining that, which if you look around you can see, to the process of sense gratification, there's really no end. It's very interesting for me. I guess I'm in the middle age range here. I'm 48. And so what I didn't understand was when I was younger was how things progress over the arc of time. You know, when you're young, and I joined in my 20s, and you know, when you're young, you're full of hope and vigor and strength, and it really feels like you can, you know, the world is your oyster. You have everything in front of you, and you have all kind of hopes and plans, right? So I became a devotee, and then been practicing, and for the most part have been, you know, there was a few years I was working, but for the most part been sort of out of touch with old friends, you know, been in touch with the family, but, you know, really been somewhat aloof. So it was very interesting to have an experience of my family and I, before we came to New York, we were in my hometown helping my father because he was ill. And I had a chance to see up close, you know, my brother, my sister, people I went to high school with, people I used to go to church with. It was very interesting because a lot of people I know are still, it's in Cincinnati, Ohio, a lot of people are still living there. And somehow or other I ended up, you know, being in touch with some high school people and even some people I went to college with. And it was very striking now seeing people over the arc of time. Whereas I remember when I joined, you know, it's like, okay, you're doing this Krishna conscious thing, I'm doing this thing. You see everybody has hopes and plans, but now it's interesting seeing people approaching middle age in their 40s and having, you know, really 20 years of getting whipped by the material energy. And it's not pretty, right? Like in popular literature and popular movies and things. What's unfortunate is you don't get an accurate picture of material life. I mean, I guess that's why it's called fiction, but it really watching, people watching so many movies, so many TVs, it really gives people an impression, and even reading books, it gives people an impression about what life is supposed to be like. And the reality is much, much different. There's an idea that, over time, as you get better with age, and you become happy and peaceful and fulfilled. And I realized that to some extent, I was conditioned by that, because when I started seeing all these people that I knew intimately when they were young and knew where they were going, and then saw them all this time later, it was shocking. And I would say that to a man, I saw people frustrated, I saw people unhappy, I saw people with unrealized dreams, even people that were, by all accounts, successful. So I went to school at Stanford, which was a good school. So I went with a lot of people that had some very serious material aspirations. And I was talking to one friend, and his wife's a doctor, he's an airline pilot, and by most material standards are doing well. But it was funny talking to him and hearing the frustration. So his wife, went to Stanford Medical School, Harvard Medical School, but, and even though I think she's working at Harvard Hospital, even though she's successful in one sense, she's upset. And he said, we often joke and ask if we're losers. He was upset because, or she's somewhat upset because while she took a little bit of time to get an MD and a PhD, some of her cohorts were getting prominent positions in the Obama administration and all these things. So she's feeling like, even though by other standards she has all this achievement, she's feeling like she doesn't have it. And my friend, who was a very talented musician, when I knew him when he was young, it seemed like the sky was the limit, ended up giving that up, and now, he's working as a pilot, and he kind of likes to fly, but he's not really satisfied with that. He'd given up this thing that was really important to him. And again, at that time, he had aspirations of being a professional musician, and he was telling me how, that dream sort of died. So, and that was just one example of many I saw of people, and then there's just the tiredness of living a material life. But it was just one example of many I saw of people not achieving peace or not achieving happiness from any of the other process they've done. So I saw it, friends that were going for material progress. I grew up in the Christian church. My father was an Episcopalian priest, so I was very active in the church. I saw people not finding satisfaction in that realm. I mean, it was kind of mind-boggling. I saw, my brother and sister dealing with frustrations in life. So there is no, what it really hit home, and what I think I knew personally from practice, because I'm a devotee, so obviously there's some realization that this is a way one should live. But it was just very striking seeing that up close over the arc of time, seeing these people I knew when they were young and full of hope, now at this point of frustration. And on the other side, being able to see what the effects on my life, and also we had this experience with my wife's family as well. So on the other side, we get to see that juxtaposed with our own practice of Krishna consciousness, and how by having the good fortune of being able to come in contact with Krishna consciousness, being able to come in contact with Prabhupada's teachings, and then taking them and practicing and using the process to clean our heart and to continually work on cleaning the dirty things in the heart, how it's had this transformative effect on us and saved us from what I saw all of these other people going through, from frustration, from bitterness, from these things. And why is that? Because in material life, everybody is searching for happiness, and they're searching for happiness, and as Prabhupada often explains, our suffering and our sufferings in life are because of ignorance. In there's on the Prabhupada Bhajan album, there's he has there's one song where he's singing the Shikshastika, and there's a purport. And Prabhupada explains, in that purport that our suffering is due to ignorance, and that the chanting of Hare Krishna cleans the dust of the heart. And he said, what is that dust? He said, it's identification with the material body. And what does that mean? Identification with the material body means practically we're trying to find happiness either on the gross platform by having things, money, nice house, chasing that. But even deeper than that is the happiness that we try to get on the subtle platform. That we want profit, adoration, distinction. We want to be somebody. We want to be somebody important. We want to have done something important. And that's really what I saw with, with these different friends and family members was really the most painful. Some of them were upset that their material situation wasn't better. But, when you're young, you expect great things, and you want to be important, and you think you're going to change the world. And then what happens? You get old and you realize you're nobody. You're just a person working with their house, and nobody cares. Nobody cares what you think. Nobody cares who you are. You aren't special. And it was crazy seeing all these people that I knew really grappling with that. Like, so this is what my life has come to. I'm in this messy house. I'm in this. I have this job that I don't really like. I'm just waiting to retire. I'm overweight. I mean, it was stunning, And meanwhile, I saw that from the practice of Krishna consciousness, we were saved, my wife and I were saved from that. And I thought, I remember what I was like in my 20s, where I was going, and I see, I would have gone down the same road as everybody else. It's easy when you're young to think, we're going to push through, and everybody thinks they're going to win. Everybody thinks they're going to conquer the material energy. You're not, everything in the movies and things like that says you're going to, but you're not. And seeing that was, again, it was very striking, and it was striking to see, it really highlighted to me what the power of Krishna consciousness and what the power of devotional service is. That we become free from all of these things that are plaguing people. People are plagued by, the desire for material things, but this the desire for that subtle happiness, the desire to be distinct, the desire to be somebody, right? And there's one purport in the third canto, I think it's 3:25, where 3 different times Prabhupada uses the word that uses this term that devotees are imperceptibly liberated. And he says there are 3 classes of devotees, first, second, and third class. He said even the third class of devotees are imperceptibly liberated. And I was always puzzling over that. What does that mean? Because when you think of liberation, and you read the Bhagavatam and you hear about great souls like the 4 Kumars or Shukadeva Goswami who had achieved liberation before they became devotees, you think this is very elevated. And here Prabhupada is saying even a third class devotee has achieved this imperceptible liberation. So I'm thinking, like, what is that? I don't understand. I don't feel liberated. I mean, I'm still struggling here. Sometimes hard to get up and, pushing through my rounds. Like, what does this mean? And it really, that point really came home to me again when I saw what these former associates of mine were going through. It's like, yeah, we may still be here in the material world, but we're not experiencing life, and we're not going through life like non-devotees. So we don't have, like, for instance, just the simple thing like our clothes, right? People ask, I know sometimes there's a discussion of should devotees wear this kind of clothes or that kind of clothes. So the real question for me is, what is the purpose of our clothing as a devotee? As a devotee, we just want to dress simply, we want to dress modestly, and we don't want to be in a situation where we're spending our energy worrying about what to wear, which plagues people. If you look around, how much time are people spend thinking they want to create a look, an identity? Am I this? Am I that? And then you're wearing clothes, and sometimes, you put on a little weight, so you're wearing pants, and they get a little tight, and it's a whole thing. And then people worry about their hairstyle, Is it long? Is it short? And just when you think it's right, in about a week and a half, you need to get a cut, and then it's different. I mean, this kind of thing plagues people. Like, and how much energy is taken up in that? And as devotees, we're freed from that. It's like, we can keep it simple, shave the head. You don't have to worry about your hair. We wear simple clothing. It's not like, oh, what am I going to wear? The white dhoti or the other white dhoti? Right? There's no, we don't use that energy, we don't use that energy. We're liberated from that small struggle for existence, but not small, from that struggle for existence that people are going through. Why? Because they're trying to create a sense of identity, a sense of self, a sense of distinction with their clothes, right? And it just, and I know from experience, as a devotee, I worked in the corporate world, and it's like, you have to have a whole thing. You have to have, you can't wear the same thing in a week, what to speak of in a month. So you have to have a whole array of ties, of shirt, and it has to be different, and you have to arrange them differently. And you're going to be judged, and your identity is going to be solidified based on that, based on what you wear, what kind of car you drive. So here we are, a spirit soul. We have a fixed identity as a servant of Krishna, and we're put in this situation where our identity is always called into question. Our identity is always changing. Are you in this position in work? You wear this clothes, this type of clothes. You have this car or that car. I mean, part of the time when my wife and I were working, we lived in a very, it was a pretty rich neighborhood in Austin, Texas, because we have older children and we wanted them in this good school district. So we were kind of like on the low end, income-wise of these neighborhoods. So we had we bought a car. We had it was like a Chevy Trailblazer, right? So a Chevy Trailblazer in a neighborhood of Lexuses, Mercedes, BMW, and it's like in any other thing, it's a nice car, it works, whatever. But you pull up to school, you drop the kids off, and you're behind a Lexus and Mercedes. I mean, you feel like, wow, I'm a chump, right? I mean, and this is the kind of thing that plagues materialistic people. Or in another sense, when we were in Charlotte, we lived in a poor neighborhood there. Krishna put us there, and it was pretty cool. But when we would ride the bus, we would ride the bus or walk everywhere. I can't tell you how many people we saw with broken phones, screen cracked, right? Now I would go downtown in Charlotte to go on Harinam, and in downtown Charlotte, it's like a banking center, and it's like, I guess, the second largest financial district or market after New York, but it really doesn't compare to New York once you come here. But so in Charlotte, like the Bank of America is headquartered there, and so I used to be down there doing Harinam with all these wealthy people, well, these well-to-do people, bankers and whatever, and I never saw a broken phone there. Why? You can't go into Bank of America to work and have a broken phone, because people are going to judge you for that, right? The people we live with were poor. Well, they have a broken phone, they can't do anything about it. But for these people who are in the banking industry, whatever, you can't go with a broken phone. And in fact, you can't go with a flip phone. You can't go with a cheap phone. You can't go with an old phone. If the iPhone 10 is out, you can't have an 8. What to speak of a 6? They're going to wonder what is wrong with you. So I mean, in all these different ways, living in materialistic life, we're put in this situation, where we're plagued by all these different, situations where our identities come into question. Your identity is based on your phone, on your clothes, on your haircut, where you live. Where do your kids go to school? Where did you go to school? Right? All these things, when our identity is fixed, we're a servant of Krishna, right? And in that identity, we can actually find happiness. In the materialistic identity, there's no end to the struggle you face. And so when Prabhupada said in that purport that devotees are imperceptibly liberated, even though we're still here and we may be sort of slogging through the day and a little tired this time or whatever it is, maybe we may not feel the prasadam was so good this day or whatever, or we didn't get any, still, it's like we're liberated from all these different struggles that materialistic people are going through, right? It's like, yeah, that's what it means. I struggled to understand that for a long time. So in that regard, Prabhupada is explaining in both of these purports that our release from material life comes only through the association with pure devotees. And I thought it's very interesting the point that Prabhupada makes in here. Because when he's using pure devotee, I mean, sometimes we take that in an elevated sense, but he's talking about the members of the Krishna Consciousness Society, provided that we are, follow, as he said, provided that we're regularly chanting, following the devotional process, rising early, following the regular principles. I mean, he's using that term to refer to members of ISKCON. So sometimes there's a debate, what is a pure devotee? But here, I mean, Prabhupada, it seems very clear to me in this purport, he says that the purpose of our movement is to give people the chance to associate with pure devotees, and we want to create pure devotees so that other people will benefit by their association. In this way, the number of pure devotees increases. And he says only a pure devotee can convert others to pure devotional service. So what that said to me was that Prabhupada had very high hopes and very high esteem for this Krishna conscious process. He knew that if people take to this process as he gave it, it will work and we will become purified, which is the whole essence of Krishna consciousness, that we have a dirty, unclean heart. We are the ones that's suffering from that. That's the cause of everyone else's suffering. And we have to take this process and use it for the purpose of cleaning our heart. That's why we chant. That's why we get up early. That's why we do all these things, is to clean the dust out of the heart. And that is the cause of all of our suffering. That's the cause of other people's suffering. And if we can do that, as devotees, then not only do we change ourselves and get the benefit of that, but then we can actually make a difference in the world and help people. Because there is no other process. There is, again, I guess I'm still young to some, but now it's like I can see very clearly, whereas before I thought, I like devotional service and I'm practicing it. And there may be, some other things people can do that are pretty good and people will be peaceful. Now I see that's just not the case. From, again, having just observed this. And sometimes you read very strong statements from Srila Prabhupada or very strong statements in the scriptures that, devotional service is the only way. It is. I haven't seen anybody else following any other process becoming purified and becoming peaceful and happy. It just, it doesn't exist. When we were in Charlotte, it's a very strong evangelical Christian base there. And going out in a dhoti, I had and chanting on the street, I kind of had a target on me. I was a magnet for Christians wanting to talk about religion and spiritual life. So in the beginning, I was a little bit generous, thinking, okay, well, I do Krishna consciousness, people are Christians, we can all kind of get there, And what I saw was that's not the case. And what was interesting as part of this was that sometimes there's conversations online among the devotee community about what's wrong with, why is the movement not being more effective. So there's one school of thought that thinks we just need to be more conservative. And more conservative, and they would often cite these evangelical Christians. They're really tough on abortion, and they're tough on women, and against homosexuality, and if we need to fix the movement, we really need to model the evangelicals. And so I'd heard that, and then I saw them up close, and I saw that for all the talk, and for all the talk about how strict they were, all the people I met, nobody was doing it. Go figure. And it had been funny because I read, before I'd gone to Charlotte, I had been looking through some of my dad's papers, and I saw some book called The Rise of the Evangelical Nation. And it was written by a lady who grew up in an evangelical church, and she's a journalist, and she was very interested in how it had become so prominent in politics. And so she went looking. She's like, I want to go sort of explore this. And she said what she found shocked her, She said that for all the talk of the leadership and all the talking points about what we believe, she said nobody follows it. And she said for all the growth that these churches were experiencing, and you hear about these great mega churches, she said every place she went, everybody was telling her, don't look who's coming in the door. They said, look who's going out the back. So this whole idea she was saying this whole idea was a myth, and they've been able, with an outside, they've been able to have outsized political influence with very small numbers. And so she was interested in exploring that. But it was funny because when we were in Charlotte, we saw that borne out. I mean, I talked to so many people about spiritual life, about religion, and it was amazing how many people were professing this strong belief, and yet their personal life was in shambles in terms of spiritual practice. I mean, it was like, it was kind of mind-blowing. It was mind-blowing how many times I would get accosted by somebody drunk, saying, no, Jesus is the only way. One guy accosted us on Harinam. He was a very big guy. And he said, this Hare Krishna is a BS religion and something, And he was drunk. Jesus is the only way. And so, I mean, sometimes I let it go. I mean, a lot of times it's tolerant, but this time, Krishna inspired me to say something. I said, yeah, well, why don't you go, when Jesus comes back, why don't you go have a beer with him? And he was like, what? How can you say that? Something. I said, yeah, why don't you have a beer with Jesus? This is what religion is about, And he became angry and belligerent, whatever, stamping his feet to himself, and then he went back in his hotel. And then he came back out, and I thought, okay, is it going to be round two? And he walked by without saying a word, Because what are we talking about? Like, and this would be a common conversation I would have with many of these Christians. They would say, well, what do you think of the Bible? And I'd say, here's the thing. I would ask them, do you accept the Srimad Bhagavatam or the Bhagavad Gita or the Chaitanya Charitamrita as a word of God? They say no. I'd say, well, good. I don't follow the Bible, so nobody's feelings are going to get hurt. You quoting the Bible at me is not going to be helpful, just like me quoting the Srimad Bhagavatam for you is not going to be helpful. So let's step back and ask, what is the point of religion? Right? The point of religion is to love and serve God. Right? And so, love is something that we can practically demonstrate. So I would tell them, I said, so if you have a wife or a husband, depending on the man or woman, I said, so if your wife, she doesn't want to spend any time with you, she doesn't want to do anything for you, she's not interested in you, and she says she loves you, are you going to accept that as love? And I say, no. I say, well, so if we don't want to use any of our energy in God's service, if we're spending more time on social media, at the movies and TV, at the club, looking at Facebook, whatever, than we spend at church and prayer or using our energy for God, where is the love? Like, what are we talking about here? Love is a practical thing, and religion should show us how to use our energy in God's service, and by that service, we should become happy and peaceful and have an understanding of the world. I said, so that's what the goal of religion is. And if you're not achieving that, either the process you're following is not correct, or you're following it incorrectly, but that's what we're supposed to achieve. And then I would paraphrase it's 11:242, the first from the Bhagavatam, where it says that by spiritual practice, 3 things should happen. That we should feel increased devotion for the Lord, we should become free from attachment to material things, and we should have direct experience of our relationship with the Lord. And those things should happen by our practice, like, when you eat, you feel, your hunger is dissipated and you feel satisfied. So, that's just a general framework. I said in our practice, we should expect that from our practice of religion, that, we have an increased desire, increased devotion for the Lord. We have an increased desire to do service for the Lord. We should see that we're becoming detached from material things, and we should be able to, as we go on, perceive that we have a direct relationship with the Lord. That should be something that awakening is growing in us. And that should be true for any religion, whether you're Christian, whether you're Hare Krishna, whether you're Muslim. You should be able to use that framework to ask yourself, what is the state of my spiritual life, right? And in that case, so for me, I would say if you can achieve that through Christianity, I don't have an issue with that. I'm a Hare Krishna, and I see this working in my life, and I know how to explain that process to others. And even though I grew up Christian, that didn't work for me. But if you can make it work, that's the point. That's the point of religion, is to reawaken this love of God in us. And that's how we find peace and happiness. And I'd say from a larger point, we have to understand that as spiritual people, we're making a claim. We're making a claim that the way you find happiness and satisfaction is by reawakening your relationship with God. And everybody in the world, in the Apple Store, whatever, is making a claim. If you do this, if you have an iPhone, if you watch this movie, if you subscribe to Netflix, if you go to college, get a job, that's how you'll be happy. I said, so we're making that claim, and if we want to preach that to people, we have to demonstrate that by our character. I said, so you coming up to me talking about the Bible, or screaming about it, that doesn't do anything. I said, but if you want to convert people to Christianity, you show them that by your practice of serving Jesus, you become happy, you become peaceful. They see you're somebody who's tolerant, works with integrity. That is what will affect people. And that's what Prabhupada is hitting in this verse, is that by us cleaning our heart, that's how, as devotees, that's how we'll have an effect on people. That is what our preaching is that if we take to this process, as he said, rising early, following the principles, chanting regularly, he's calling those who follow this pure devotees, because he knows that this process will produce that if we take this process seriously, use it to clean our hearts, not only will we be peaceful and happy, but we'll be able to show other people how to achieve that. And that's why he says, if a preacher behaves properly in devotional service, he'll be able to convert others. Otherwise, his preaching will have no effect. And that's how we can, judge. We can, first of all, judge what is the state of our own heart, but also, are we having an effect on people? And Prabhupada is very clear that, if we take this process and use it as intended, use it to clean our heart and very rigorously clean that dust, we will be happy, we will be peaceful, and that is what will affect other people. That is what will affect people, and that is the best preaching. Our preaching is by example. And so, with that I will end, and if there's any questions or comments, please feel free to